Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. On January 27th, at the Monroe County Election Board meeting, County Clerk Nicole Brown shared her concerns regarding the security of their storage facility.
The only thing that I would say is that we did get an unusual call from the owners of the storage facility in Ellisville that someone had contacted them requesting to know what was in our storage site. We are fortunate, incredibly fortunate, that because my office pays the bill, that they told whoever called, and I don't know if it was an innocuous caller or a bad actor, but they told that person, we will not share anything with you. You do not pay the space for this. And so those are the kinds of concerns that I have with respect to where things are, who's in control of that. And so I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention, that I did learn of that call and just make sure that it is in the record that I have concerns about that.
Board member Donovan Garlitz said of the facilities that he has reached out to, 4 of the 5 responded. However, they said they would prefer to have the election equipment taken down nightly. Clerk Brown responded saying that she does not have many other options if these sites do not work out.
I think I've said on a previous meeting, by the time I was looking at places that had to look at places that we actually use on election day, I think I told you that it had been recommended that we not use places that we use. I kind of ran out of options and had to start thinking about some things that, at least as you said earlier, we already know are ADA compliant. We already have history with them. And so perhaps they would be generous and allow us to use those for a little bit more time than election day. I bring all of that up to say, I really am out of options to recommend to the board if we cannot make these work.
Garlitz said that although the sites were not optimal, Clerk Brown has done her due diligence to make the voting sites work for everyone. Garlitz acknowledged that they are running out of time to make a decision on the voting sites and moved to have the election board use the Napa building as the sole in-person voting location for the primary and general elections, and the Johnson Hardware building for mail-in votes. Brown said that to avoid confusion, she would prefer to use the North Showers building for mail-in votes, with both the Napa building and Election Central for early voting locations.
I feel I would be remiss if I did not continue to address my concerns about voter confusion. And so because in previous minutes, we had already talked about allocating the North Showers for the mail-in ballots, and because of my concern that voters will show up at Election Central expecting to vote early. Some of them will be perfectly fine if there is a line and can go over to Napa, not very far away. I continue to be concerned about my older and disabled voters, and then having to turn them away and say we're not doing early voting at Election Central. I am hopeful that if we're not going to do the additional satellites in the more rural parts that put you closer to the more rural parts of Monroe County, that we can at least have those 2 sites, the Napa, which is not my deal, but we're getting to the same page now, and Election Central, so that if you show up at either one of those, you're guaranteed to be able to vote without being turned away. And that's my part of the discussion.
Deputy Clerk Tree Martin explained that people are accustomed to voting at Election Central and will show up regardless of their official decision to use the Napa building.
Okay, well, Nicole is right. People will come to Election Central to vote. They'll come and they'll argue with you, and that's right there. I have to have a person basically standing at the door saying, no, you don't vote here anymore. If you do all your voting at Napa, then we can do all of our work at Election Central. If we take Napa and do voting and Election Central and do voting, then I will have to move to the Showers location to do my part of the election. Does that make more understanding? And then there's also the question is, how much of Election Central are you going to use for early voting? Because if you use too much, then I still have to worry about overseas and having people in there. Our elderly people this year do not want to sit as close as we had them last time. We're going to get some pushback. We didn't know what we didn't know at the last pandemic, but now that people know, they're not going to want us to cram them together. Last time we put 2 people at one table for the e-poll books. I don't think that's going to be possible this year. They're going to want one table all to themselves. So you're also dealing with those questions too. If we keep it Napa, then how do we utilize Election Central? If you have both locations, I'll gladly go to Showers, but you're still going to have to refigure Election Central too.
The board voted to utilize the Napa building as the in-person voting site for both the general and primary elections, and to have the Johnson building open for the final 2 weeks of voting. The board voted to approve the motion unanimously. At the Monroe County Commissioners meeting on January 26th, County Attorney Margie Rice explained a contract with E&B Paving for construction related to the southern section of the Karst Farm Greenway.
So this is a continuation of a trail project. You'll remember that the Monroe County got about $2.3 million a few years ago to develop a trail that will connect Ellettsville to Karst Farm Greenway. We completed the northern portion of that. This is a contract for the southern portion, which will go from Loesch Road, Kelly, correct me if I get this wrong, from Loesch to Woodyard. We have to do a railroad crossing. It's going to be a little bit more shorter, but more complicated. We did ask for bids, and E&B had the lowest bid, so you've already awarded it to them, and then this is the contract that they have reviewed, and it follows the same form of the last contract we used. And we'd like you to approve it today so that we can get started on this in the spring. This is not a rush for you to approve it today, so if you have questions, let us know. We expect to give them a notice to proceed. The contract says we'll give them a written notice to proceed. We expect to do that no later than April 1st. It may be that the weather is such that we can issue them a notice to proceed earlier. However, we want to make sure that we don't issue that too early because the contract requires them to complete the project within 120 days.
The commissioners voted to approve the contract unanimously. The commissioners also approved changes to a grant given to the Monroe County Humane Association. The funds were initially intended to be used for an additional vehicle. However, due to the supply chain challenges, they have decided to use the grant money to make security upgrades at the emergency center. Rice added that she thinks the program is a valuable resource for county residents that more people should be aware of.
Yeah, I agree. When I was doing this work, and I actually knew Susan Bartlett. I ironically had bought a car from her. She was a neighbor of my in-laws. She's a great woman. When she died, she left money to the Humane Association to get this center built. And having known Susan and having worked with, our animal control issues at the county, I was learning as I was writing this grant agreement. So I agree with you, Lee. This could be better promoted and known throughout our community because it's a wonderful service. And people often, they worry more about their pets than they do about themselves when they've got one of these situations. So yeah, we'll work on trying to get that word out.
The next commissioners' meeting will be held on February 2nd. And we'll have more Cats Week after this message.
I'm at risk of thinking there's just no point in trying.
I'm at risk of looking in the mirror and hating what I see.
I'm I'm at risk of regretting what I do, just to join the crowd.
I'm at risk of being told not to tell. And you would never know it by looking at me.
But with Girls Inc. in my corner,
There for me, every day.
Believing in me, showing me what's possible,
I can be strong enough to respect myself and my body.
to say I can rather than I can't,
to say no with no apology,
To be a leader.
to finish school.
to own my future.
Welcome back to CATSweek. On January 25th, at the Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners meeting, Operations and Development Division Director Tim Street asked the board to approve a contract with Marshall Security, LLC, for 2022 security services at various parks and trails.
Right. So we are recommending approval of a contract with Marshall Security and Investigations to provide security patrols at Switchyard Park and throughout other core downtown parks in 2022. The amount is not to exceed $278,821. This is going to be funded from a new account this year. It was still jointly budgeted by both Switchyard Park and by the Operations Division. However, the account, because of the way some funds have been swept together with ARPA funds and things like that, they are coming out of a joint account this year. So in mid-2021, Park Board, you approved a contract with Marshall to begin security patrols. We had good success with that last year. Security overall has been well received, and we did notice decreasing incident reports throughout the season. There are, of course, a lot of factors that could go into that, including just decreasing use seasonally. However, we've felt that their presence, especially after hours, has been effective and appreciated. We've had comments from the public. We've checked in with the police department, and overall believe they have provided a good service.
Mills commented that she supports the funding for security at the parks, but said that ideally the police budget could cover this in the future.
Thank you for that, Tim. And I'm certainly glad to hear that it's been well received and the incident reports are down. I still, just looking at the cost to parks, it's a little disappointing that parks has to pay for this. I understand the police are stretched very thin. And, it wasn't really a solution to do nothing. So I'm glad that parks is able to afford this and that it's working and creating a safer environment.
Board member Jim Whitlatch asked why the funding for security came from a different source last year. Street explained that it was funded by the CARES Act in 2021 and will be funded by the American Rescue Plan Act in 2022. Whitlatch also asked for clarification about which parks have been selected for patrolling. Street explained how they decided which parks were chosen and that they have the flexibility to make changes to the route during the year.
Sure. When we originally, identified the locations they were going to be working on last year, we chose a handful of parks that were close to the downtown area, and that was because of a number of incidents that had occurred, and wanting to have a security presence in response to those incidents, as well as a security presence to be present with some of our staff at times, especially our custodial staff when they went into certain locations and were doing work. We certainly have the ability throughout the year to adjust as needed. And we have in the past year asked Marshall occasionally to, if we know of something going on or something specific is happening, we've asked them, for example, to go to Twin Lakes Rec Center at one point because we had wind that something might be going on. And so they posted up over there for us. So we have the ability to ask them, to be present in different locations, but in terms of their standard patrols, they basically kind of make a loop that includes up to Miller Showers and Crestmont, People's Park, Waldron Hill Buskirk Park, Butler Park, RCA Park, Seminary, Switchyard, Building Trades, and then of course the beeline between all of those locations from end to end is the core of where they're patrolling.
Street said the security officers are unarmed and interact with the Bloomington Police Department when they are patrolling. The contract with Marshall Security, LLC passed unanimously. Public comments were tense at the Monroe County Community School Corporation meeting on January 25th. During the school board meeting, bus drivers complained of a toxic work environment. Rocky Laster, a bus driver and parent at MCCSC, criticized the working conditions in the transportation department.
Our transportation department is rapidly failing. We've lost over 40 school bus drivers in the last year, and many more are actively seeking employment elsewhere. The few old-timers left swear that this used to be a great place to work, but all that most of us have known is this downward spiral over the last 5 years that has us quickly circling the drain. We need parents and the public and this board to hear our truth before it's too late. Any organization is only as good as its people. When you fail to respect and appreciate your employees, they eventually leave and you fail. Updated technology is fine. Condensed bus routing is great. But the heart of the transportation department has always been and is always going to be the dedicated people who wake up at 5 a.m. to come drive our children safely to school. We've currently lost sight of this and we're rapidly sinking. The drivers feel disrespected, unappreciated, and afraid. There's a climate of intimidation and fear that permeates our department. Many drivers have left because of this. It makes us seriously wonder if HR even conducts exit interviews of our departing bus drivers, monitors, and supervisors. There seems to be no end to the parade of loyal, seasoned veteran drivers who have fled our bus lot in the last few years. Many of us are concerned about safety. As we unfortunately experienced earlier this school year, a split-second situation while driving a bus can alter lives forever. The safest drivers are always the ones who run the same established, familiar routes each day. What we have now, with several drivers running multiple unfamiliar routes in the dark, is a recipe for disaster, and it's getting worse each day. Honestly, 3 minutes isn't nearly enough time to go into details or to cover even 25% of the issues we're facing. We respectfully request 10 minutes presentation time at next month's meeting. We understand that the superintendent is extremely busy, but an entire department of this corporation is in flames. We beseech you to come spend just one day with us next door at the bus lot. Board members, we welcome all of you as well. Ride a few routes, listen to our radio traffic, talk to the drivers, ask us what's wrong and why we're leaving. I promise that we wouldn't all be here after our 11-hour day today if we weren't desperate and serious. This transportation department has suffered in silence long enough. I truly hope I'm not retaliated against for blowing the whistle on bad behavior, but if I am, you'll hear from a different driver representative next month and the month after that until conditions improve or our department finally collapses.
The school board approved a new contract for next school year with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, the trade union that represents the school corporation's bus drivers. In other school board news, the MCCSC Board of Trustees made amendments to the school system's COVID-19 policies. Superintendent Dr. Jeff Hauswald said the current system left schools with staff shortages as the Omicron variant continues to sweep through the state.
Yes, Board. The CMAC met last week. That's the COVID Monitoring and Advisory Committee. And we are, and I am proposing, based upon that meeting, new procedures that are a result of rapidly changing realities and understandings associated with COVID-19 variants. Underlying these decisions is a clear desire to keep our schools open to in-person instruction and to maximize the time by which students can attend in-person instruction while simultaneously maintaining safe procedures to help limit the spread of COVID-19 in our schools and community. And while recognizing that due to a number of cases and staffing limits, maintaining our current procedures has become impossible. In order to fulfill these two goals simultaneously, our students, staff, and visitors must continue to wear masks, and we encourage them to adhere to federal officials' guidelines regarding surgical style disposable masks, as well as top grade N95 and K95 respirators. We have more information about those on our website. We're working on securing additional high quality masks for our students and staff. Second, MCCSC continues to remind our community that FDA approved vaccines, including boosters, are highly effective at preventing COVID-19. We plan to share, we have additional information on our website to that effect as well.
As part of the new policies, MCCSC will no longer publicly update COVID-19 data on its website. The board approved the policies with one board member, April Hennessy, dissenting. And we'll have more Cats Week after this message.
For hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.
Welcome back to Cats Week. At the Ellettsville Town Council meeting on January 24th, council members discussed bids for the Community Crossings Grant for various road resurfacing and a culvert replacement. Milestone and E&B Paving both submitted bids on the projects. Street Commissioner Kip Hetty thanked the people who submitted their bids.
I'd just like to take the time real quick to thank the two companies that placed quotes and bids at this time. I think a couple of the guys are on here as well tonight. So I just want to reach out and tell them all thank you for doing that.
The Ellettsville Town Council will vote on the bids at their next meeting. On January 22nd, the League of Women Voters held a legislative update where Senators Shelley Yoder and Matt Pierce shared the work that they have been doing for this legislative session and answered questions from Monroe and Brown County residents. Senator Matt Pierce gave a summary of how the legislative session has gone so far.
Okay, well, it's been an interesting session so far. It got off to a really fast start. And the thing, at least in the House side, is there's a lot of kind of buzz or scuttlebutt or whatever you might call it about the fact that there are a lot of primary opponents on the Republican side being recruited against incumbents. So I think that the House has a lot of focus on the May primary coming up. And I think you see that reflected in the agenda, or at least the bills that are getting the most attention. And so if you look at the first couple of weeks so far in the House, we've had a bill that essentially pushes back on vaccine mandates and pushes to end the governor's emergency orders related to COVID. There's been a wing of the Republican base that obviously has been very angry about those emergency orders and vaccines in general. So it seems that the House Republicans want to be able to point to something they did to address those issues. We've got bills floating around about so-called critical race theory, or what gets taught in our schools, and the Senate gave up on their bill after one of their members suggested that when you discuss Nazism, you should equally discuss both sides, which obviously is just crazy. And so the Senate kind of just killed that, I think, to try to tamper the kind of uproar over that. But there's a House version that is still kind of working its way through the system. And so that obviously points to another issue that the Republican base voters have been upset about. And I think also the fact that the Republican candidate for governor of Virginia was successful pushing that issue kind of gives them a sense that that's good politics. The so-called constitutional carry bill, which would eliminate any gun permitting or background requirements in order to carry a concealed weapon, that's moving along. So that's another area that appeals to the Second Amendment purists that are a big part of the Republican base. the partisan school board bill, there is a bill that would require people to declare their parties when running for school board. And it looks like the House has given up on that bill. It was heard in Elections Committee. Not a single person actually testified in favor of it. And then it was held. And I anticipated there'd be perhaps some amendments in a vote in the next week, but it's just kind of disappeared. So I think that maybe the House Republicans have thought better of that bill based on the pushback on it. So that may well be dead, but nothing's ever really dead until the legislature adjourns.
Senator Shelley Yoder gave a rundown on the bills she has been paying attention to thanks to the survey her district members filled out.
I really say thank you to those who filled out the pre-session survey. And I wanted to give some feedback on some of the numbers on those surveys that we received and then legislation that I filed on your behalf. The numbers we got back, so 80% of those of you living in the district responded favorably to addressing, of course, climate change, the climate crisis, and some environmental protections. And so to that end, I filed several bills. One, to make sure that we address net metering and its end, or at least the repealing and restoring of net metering. That is SB 314, and would sure love your help in getting some attention there. I'm trying to get some attention at the State House, but your lobbying for those bills really does make a difference. Also worked alongside the Citizen Action Coalition as well as the NAACP to put up some parameters and guidelines on establishing community solar facilities throughout Indiana, and that is Senate Bill 313, excuse me. And also working with some of our food insecurity issues and our farmers markets here, worked directly with them to craft some language to move Indiana's certified farmers markets to accept both SNAP and WIC. I also heard back from you loud and clear. Matt talked about this, but childcare, accessibility, affordability, and we know that Hoosier parents are just at their wits' end with COVID, and right now the roller coaster ride of both childcare's closing due to COVID and sporadically so, and then how that impacts our parents and having to find childcare or stay home when they have needs, whether it's in their jobs, if they're no matter where they are, but the stress that our parents are under right now to find childcare. So I did file a bill to address that, and it's Senate Bill 160.
The senators answered more questions from community members, and the full recording is available now on www.catstv.net or on the City of Bloomington YouTube page. And that's all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.